Welcome to Failing Forward. This show is all about the other side of success. We talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators who aren't afraid to share the mistakes they've made. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. Every setback is just a setup for something bigger, if you're willing to learn from it. All right, here we are back for another episode of Failing Forward. Today, I've got my trusty sidekick back in action with me, Mr. Will Rauber, and we've got a long-time friend of mine joining us on the pod today. Chris Thomas and I have been friends since, grade school. We played baseball together. We've seen a lot of different things. We've seen a lot of different evolutions of both of our lives in this period of time, from being kids and throwing a baseball around to being parents and being business owners and community leaders and all these other things. Chris has a great story and a great journey of how he ultimately ended up back here in the Valley, and excited to have Chris on the pod with us today.
Yeah, we've been friends since the 1900s, as my son says. Way back in the 1900s. He says that about once a day. It makes me madder every time.
That hurts.
Yeah, it does.
When you say it out loud like that, I mean, I'm going to start using that, I think.
That's it.
When I see people, I've known
your
him
boys
since
will
the
soon
1900s.
Since way back in the 1900s, Dad?
Oh.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Wow, that's a deep cut, I think. All right, so a lot of different things that we could talk about today. I think I want to start with the fact that Chris has gone through this journey of his professional career, from spending some time in the military and leaving the area, ultimately coming back to our community here, taking over the family business, his father-in-law's family business, and there's been a lot of lessons that we can attribute to that. So let's take a step into the time machine here and just kind of talk through the Chris Thomas origin story, so to speak. The time that you and I, left high school at Western Reserve, fellow Blue Devil here in the early 2000s, not in the 1900s, thank God. What happened after high school? So you're at Western Reserve High School, and where do you go next?
First, thanks for having me. Like you said, I grew up in Berlin Center with you, played Little League Baseball together, and his aunt was our English teacher.
That's right.
And unremarkable career as far as high school.
Baseball.
Had a lot of fun. No, all of it. I was unremarkable across the board. But knew I had to sort of make something of myself. I had a young lady I was pretty serious about, so needed some direction. I did what we all did in the Valley. I worked some odd jobs, some factories. Ultimately, about 6 months after we graduated, February of 2004, I joined the Army. Did 4 years in the Army, right at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and did a couple of tours over there and learned some pretty valuable lessons in that. Proud to serve during that time. You guys were around for that. You know what it was. And got out, and the smartest thing I ever did is when we were in high school, although I was an unremarkable student, I don't think it was intelligence, it was more effort. So when I took the ASVAB, the placement test for the military, I actually scored really, really well. And so I asked my recruiter, what I should do, and he guided me towards the intelligence world. And I didn't know I couldn't spell intelligence, but I went and had a pretty good career there in the military, and then leveraged that into doing some work in D.C. as a defense contractor supporting the military. That was very good, seeing sort of the other side, very white collar. I was at the time, it was a big partnership between sort of civilian academics and then tactical military types, in order to kind of answer that call. And so I got some really, really good lessons there, and had a really good part of my career. But ultimately, I'm from here, and my father-in-law had a business. I used my GI Bill to earn my business degree from American University. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. We knew each other, but we weren't really connected yet, but I had the bug that we all have. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur, just finishing up business school. My father-in-law comes down to our house, and we lived in Charlottesville, Virginia. over a campfire. He convinces me I had a really good, I don't want to call it cushy, but cushy government job. I could have just sort of rode it out, did 30 years, white picket fence and a golden retriever. But him and I decided over a campfire that we were going to roll the dice and we're coming back. And I, like every young entrepreneur that hasn't done anything, I thought I had it all figured out. I thought that I had, the missing piece that, the Elon Musks of the world hadn't figured out yet. When you're young, you think that.
Yep.
And came back and realized I don't know anything. I don't know the first thing about anything.
Yep.
So we were supposed to buy it in that first 90 days. I don't know if you remember that conversation. 3 years later, I was finally ready.
Wow.
That's how long it took you realize, the most valuable lesson we talk about failing forward. That was maybe one of the first times I started to know what I didn't know, realize what I didn't know. That's a valuable piece is, I tell my son now that I'm 40, I'm so much dumber than when I was 20, so much dumber because, you have those experiences. So, but one of the great things, Tim and H.D. Davis, he was my first call. I tell people all the time, he was my first call when I came back. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew roughly how I wanted to do it. And I saw what he was doing with Harold. And before it was Growth Partners, when it was just H.D. Davis. And, the other side of that I saw with, him and Carla and the boys. And that's an aspect of this whole thing that gets overlooked so often. There's a classic line from We Were Soldiers. I don't know if you remember that Mel Gibson movie. Mm-hmm. And the young kid asks him, how does being a soldier and a dad, affect one another? And he said, I hope that by being good at one, it makes me better at the other. And that stuck with me forever.
Yep.
I take what I learned with my kids, at bath time into my business place. And when I'm sitting with my lenders and my attorneys, I try to take that into my coaching or my personal life. And they make you better. So either way, we acquired Tri-County Tower back in 2018. Tim and his folks at HA, well, mainly just him, but they've done all of our accounting and been a big part of whatever success we've had. They helped me put together a deal. We acquired Tri-County Tower in 2018, and since then it's been steady growth. It's gone maybe better than I could have anticipated, and we've had some other successes along the way, along with many, many, many failures, which again kind of brings me here. But it's been a great ride, and Tim and HD have been a huge part of our family's move back here. So again, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of tidbits in here we got to call out. Number one, Chris is also a member of the very specific group that Will and I have formed here about high school sweethearts.
Okay, that's a lot. I mean, we got quite a few so far.
We're really forming this community of people that have been sticking it out for some period of time here. Yep. Alyssa, Chris's wife, and I go just as far back, and Alyssa and I were in the same grade growing up. And I remember the first call I got from Chris was actually about a tax credit. There was an issue with a new home that was purchased. There was a tax credit question, an H&R Block or whatever tax service he was dealing with at the time. There was something that wasn't going right. We jumped in and we figured it out together. And then that kind of opened up some conversations for us. And you talk about the things that you've learned as a father helping you as a business owner and vice versa. And I know that was a big part of your decision to come back to this valley and come back to this region. And you're someone that I look up to with a tremendous amount of respect for who you are as a father and who you are as a community member. And I'd like to hear your perspective a little bit about that being a driving force to coming back here. Is that your kids have some unique challenges that you guys are trying to figure out at the time when you're living in a community that you're not familiar with. You're not familiar with their resources. And then that opens up your decision to come back here and look at some of the resources of this community. So can you elaborate a little bit on that and why that was a driving force to come back here as well?
Yeah, sure. So my wife and I have 4 children ranging from 11 to 15. My 3 youngest, I have identical twins, 12-year-old boys, Colton and Hunter, and my daughter, who's 11, her name's Zoe. My 3 youngest ones are on the autism spectrum, so they need various levels of support throughout their academic and emotional kind of development. Alyssa and I are very stable, but nothing like a strong community. when it comes to even having our parents, our cousins, our friends. That was a big driving factor in coming back home, right? Is nothing beats family. And but when we started looking, after Doug and I had that conversation, I started just kind of cursory searching. Here in the Mahoning Valley, we have an incredible amount of resources specifically in the autism space. I mean, two of the best, I have to call them out. Potential development schools there in Youngstown, and then the Rich Center for Autism, which is connected to YSU. Those have to be regional or, I don't know, national leaders in this space. I don't know of anybody who's giving more support than they are as far as that grassroots development and the therapies that they offer and the support and the people and the whole nine. When you get that diagnosis as a parent, and we have mutual friends, in all of that space, that's a big part of our life now. That's a scary day. That's because you don't know. It's you love your children like anything, and nothing changes there. But all of a sudden, all those same fears that we had about our normal kids, just having them grow up. Now there's this whole thing. I don't know the first thing about autism. So how am I going to help my kids from an emotional standpoint, from a behavioral standpoint, from an educational standpoint? So having that support, number one, just coming home to our friends and family. And like you said, we have a really good group here that was still here. So just aunts and uncles coming home to help us, with the day-to-day challenges of having young children. But then the educational side of that, it's a big deal. And now, flash forward here, and now that we've had some success with our business, and we're in a position to sort of give back and participate a little bit more. We've been very, very heavily involved with potential development on anything that they ever ask. I would rob a bank for those folks. And through, there's nonprofits out there doing the Lord's work. I mentioned Dylan's House earlier, Amy and Kevin Shope, that are absolutely carrying the water for a huge part of our community and making resources and educational things accessible. That's one of the biggest things, the biggest challenge. We get calls. I get calls all the time now that we're sort of, our placement and access is there. People don't know. It's just, you're not in high school. They don't teach you what to do if you have autistic children, or you send them to school. So we're trying to, and Amy and Kevin are really doing a lot. All the school, the Rich Center, potential development, they're doing a lot to make resources available for those young families who don't know. So what's step one? What's the first form I have to fill out? Where do I get my kids enrolled? How do I find communities that can help support us and just talk to each other? Oh, your kid's doing that too? Now I'm not alone in the world, right? Right. That's a big part of it. When you start getting introduced, we're all fighting the same fight. Every kid's a little different, every circumstance, but having those resources, the awareness, and then just those connections, it's made the world of difference. My kids are well above, as far as from a development standpoint, from the time they were 3-4 years old till the trajectory we thought they might be on. They are well above that because of the amount of resources that we've been able to apply, and the people that we've met. That
community is amazing, though. I mean, my wife worked at the Rich Center for Autism for 4 or 5 years a while back, and then the friends that we've made through that process, just, I mean, we're still great friends with them. And it's just having someone to bounce those ideas off of, like, hey, what makes sense? It all goes back to the community here in Youngstown, which is special, really, really special.
And it opened my eyes substantially. I mean, when you and I first talked about this, I mean, I had an idea, but nowhere along the appropriate magnitude of the idea of not only the challenges as a parent, in the different ways of looking at things and the things that you needed to do differently, and how you were raising kids and teaching kids and asking questions and communicating with your children. And it was something that the minute that I got involved with potential development and started to see what they were doing, and went on site and spent some time there with Paul and Jody and the team, and truly understood the kind of work that they were doing, because I was raised by teachers. All my aunts that raised me were all teachers, and I knew the challenges of being a teacher, but teaching to this community requires a different level of effort, because every kid needs something a little bit different and needs spoken to differently. They need to learn differently, and every kid, period, needs to learn a little bit differently, but this is just magnitude on a different level. And I mean, I think to your point about drawing parallels of being a father and being a business owner, this is one of those things that you can very much so apply this to the business world, because every one of your customers is different. Every one of your employees is different. You're not speaking to every single one of your employees the same way. You're not speaking to every one of your customers the same way. And you're just kind of, to some degree as an entrepreneur, like, I hate to make it sound like this, but, you're throwing the spaghetti noodles at the wall, right? And just seeing what sticks, right? And as a parent, I think that that's true.
But you don't have experience on this the first time. I mean, I love to watch and compare all my friends. We don't have kids, but it's funny to me to see the experience here, the experience there, and especially with my wife as a professional. That's what she does. She understands the psychology, and I don't. So when we talk about it, we have different mindsets, but to see all of our friends compared to one another, it's great too. And when you see that community, when they talk to each other and learn from each other, that's what's important.
Yeah.
And I say this to people sometimes because, we've been a part of a number of organizations and we've spoken to some folks. And when you talk about the value, especially with potential with Paul and Jody and those folks, my message has been consistent, is what it's led to is my kids are happier and better. Like, there's no better cause in the world.
Nope.
My kids, my Colt, my Hunter, my Zoe, are better because they are more capable, because their vocabulary has come along, because their day-to-day sort of behaviors and activities and capabilities are better. There's no better mission in the world. So it's not some arbitrary, cause that we're fighting. This is real. These are my kids and how they go throughout the world. So, I love everybody involved in that community, and as we we've gotten more and more involved, and as we have time, we're going to be more and more involved and make sure that we continue to support that effort the way it's supported us.
Yeah. That's great. So as a member of the High School Sweethearts Club, we'll call it. Maybe we get some cool T-shirts made.
Yeah, that's it. We just hit 19 years a couple of days ago.
Congratulations.
That's right, 19 years.
Same October next
There
month
you go.
for me.
Yep.
So
We're
it's the same
September
year,
2nd.
06. Yeah, that's awesome.
So next year's the 20-year mark.
Yeah, we're going to do something cool, right?
That is-
I
that's
already
it.
started thinking about it, right? I don't know what to do.
So
I never know.
You're going to have a big party.
So let's talk about, one of the things that I tell people, especially as we're like mentoring and coaching students in college or our young team members, and I say the most important thing that you can do is pick your partner, right? And you don't understand the magnitude of that decision until later, right? As you say, you're 40 now and you realize how much dumber you are than when you were 20, right? Because you know what you don't know, or you're starting to get an idea of what you don't know. Well, you guys have gone through tremendous amount of stress as a married couple, whether that was your time overseas, which is a level of stress that I cannot relate to, being away from your partner and not knowing whether or not they're safe today, whether it was starting a family in an area of the world that you're not super familiar with, and then, coming home and, jumping into this business head first and learning your way through this. And you and Alyssa have stayed, tried and true over this period of time, where I'm sure that there were plenty of bumps along the way and it wasn't always smooth sailing. But if you could go back to, Chris at 23 years old and say to yourself, these are the things that I would do differently with Alyssa. These are the things that I would do differently as a husband, as a father. Is there anything that jumps out and says, I'm doing this better now, but I wish I would have started doing it earlier?
Yeah. Oh, that list is long. Number one, it's all her, right? I know I've spoken with you. It's all her. I can't do any of this. I'm sort of the face of the business. I'm a high school football coach. I'm doing a number of these things. It's all her. I can only do this because she is my rock every step of the way. I've heard the way you spoke about Carla. That's what it always is. They're our rock. And my late father-in-law, when we first got married, he gave me a very simple but profound piece of advice. He said, so here's the deal, Chris. For the rest of your life, you have to do every single thing you can to make her happy, and then she has to do the same. Mm-hmm. If you guys do that, you'll be fine. She started much earlier than I did. She started that right away. I think it's just, kind of that giving back, not being selfish. Sometimes when you when you're an entrepreneur, when you, I put myself first a little bit more than I should have, especially younger. And there was just kind of an awareness that I didn't have until later. Now I tell her every day now that I'm making up for that now. I realize that maybe around 30, and I'm giving back every single step that I can. But it's a partnership, and it's work-life balance 50-50. That's a myth, right? I have the other one that we all hear is the truth. It's 70-30. It's on my 30 days, she has to be my 70, and vice versa. When she, just not having that day and she needs a nap or she needs to go to the spa with the girls, I'm in. There's no questions. There's no haggling. There's, when she needs me, I'm there. When I need her, she's there. And that's it.
It's complementary. That's how we talk about it all the time. It's just what you're not good at, divide and conquer type of situation, which is always, you need somebody like that because you're not going to be 100% every day.
Yeah. I mean, and it is the most important partnership because if that one fails, the rest of them fail. As opposed to the other way around, where if the business fails, you can get a job.
Oh yeah.
You can start a new business. Yep. You could this, that, or the other, but there's no fixing that. Once that is cracked, then it's very difficult to rebuild that. So I know that's something that you and I have always, shared the same opinion of in terms of, how we feel about, our wives and how they keep us kind of, zeroed into what we need to do.
And it's that faith and trust. I mean, I have, certainly faith, and I trust her, but she trusts that I'm out here doing this, and there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of risks we take. And some, she doesn't even maybe calculate all of it or know everything that's on the table.
Might be better that way sometimes.
That's exactly, she's like that. She's a saver. I'm a spender. She's very conservative. I'm the risk taker, but that's that complementary. It's a wonderful word. And there's times when we don't talk business much. That's the crazy thing. Like when I was in the intelligence world, much of what I did was classified, so we could never talk work. Now everything's wide open. We still don't talk work. Yeah. We don't talk because she doesn't want to know, the interest rate on line of credit or when these payments are coming due or how we're making payroll, early on. Like she's not, because she gets so stressed. So she just said, you know what? I trust the bank isn't coming to get our house. Like I trust that. And then that gives me a certain level of confidence to operate from. Like that's my mission. That's my only job is to keep this. Now, to be fair, like I bought a business, but I was handed the keys to a Ferrari. I'm just keeping it on the road. That's it. Right. So, but I mean, that's, somewhat of a task, and that her having faith in me and knowing that, hey, this business goes under, we'll start another one. I'll go get a job at Dick's Sporting Goods, whatever, right? We'll be fine. She convinced me of that. I used to lose sleep like we all do early on. There's who cares about that? That's just, the sort of the means to an end sort of in her eyes. So that actually gives me better confidence to operate and be successful in that realm.
And to her credit, or in her defense, either one, Lou's been surrounded by this her whole life. Doug and Cheryl, your in-laws, are amazing human beings and have always been amazing human beings. I've known them since I was a little kid. But they raised Alyssa in this culture of entrepreneurialism and being accustomed to the ebbs and flows of that. Whereas, if you're raised in an environment where both your parents are school teachers or work for a union or this, that, or the other, it's different. You got your 9 to 5, you got your summers off, you got your this, that, or the other. Whereas, when Doug got the call that there was an issue on a Sunday in the middle of dinner, he set down his fork and left.
That's right.
Right? And that's a mentality that's not necessarily easy to teach someone. That I think is the only time in the early years of growing our business that Carla and I ever struggled in that balance was she wasn't really ever exposed to that. Her father worked in the steel mill, her mother worked in the school system. They had pretty structured jobs, as opposed to, I've always kind of been in an eat what you kill kind of a situation. Right. And, it takes a little bit of time to get used to that. So
I like that, eat what you kill.
That's right.
It's a great lesson.
I'm
not in that world, right? I wasn't in that world before, and it takes a long time to understand that mentality. But once you get it, then you're hungry, and there's something that clicks, and when you see it, right?
The sky's the limit once you realize it.
1,000%.
So let's go back to kind of early days at Tri-County Tower, right? So you were in a unique situation, much like me, where you had a mentor. You had somebody that was there to hold your hand through those early days of the business. I had Harold in my business, you had Doug. And, Doug and Frank had built an amazing business at Tri-County Tower. And, Doug had a different kind of motivation to make sure that you were successful than maybe had you bought the business from just any other person, right? He knows that this business is ultimately what's going to provide for his daughter and his grandkids. And obviously you, his basically adopted son in this situation here. So he had a different level of motivation to kind of, help you, guide you through some of these things. And I know that you and I have had conversations about this, and you spent a lot of time with Doug through this. And we lost Doug this past year, and he was an amazing people to a lot of individuals in our lives. But what are the ways that he helped you in those early years of the business? You're coming in and you kind of to some degree think you know everything, and you're going to jump in and you're going to run this business and you're going to figure everything out. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into some areas where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that this is how this really works. Can you give us a little behind the scenes of some of those fireside chats with Doug that really helped you through those early days of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with, if you knew Doug, and so many people did, like Tim said, we lost him this last year. That was a tremendous loss for the family. He was a lot to a lot of people. Professionally is probably at the bottom of that list. But when you go in as a young entrepreneur and you think, I've read all the business books, right? I knew it. I did macroeconomics. I got this, It's all those other things that they never teach you. You're dealing with, he used to say this, he would say, Chris, book, you're dealing with people here. There's nothing in there that can teach you how to deal with people. And he used to say, he never went to college, but he said if he could go back, he would have gone back and got a psychology degree, because the art of dealing with people is everything. The biggest lesson that people, or aspect of that people didn't see, maybe outside of me specifically, in that Doug was such a force and a presence, and he was loud and he was opinionated, he was smart, and he was always in charge. But after I bought Tri-County in 2018, he started listening. I would go over, he has a cabin right across the street from me, right? And I would have these problems that he'd been having for 20 years. And, payroll and accounts receivable and all these things, these little things, right? Insurance went up, and I would go over there. And of course, because now it's my problem, it's the biggest problem on earth, and it's the first time this has ever happened to anybody. So I would just start, I wouldn't even say hello. Can you believe that these people are blah, 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 blah. And he would just, this guy, I never saw him, and he would just lit like a therapist. Like I was on a couch in New York City, and he was just listening. And he would let me, I didn't know that, he was letting me work it out. I knew what it was, I knew what I had to do. But that process, he taught me how to kind of manage that process of work, and then we would get to the lesson of the thing, and he would say, listen, you can't go to bed like this. You can't go home and have dinner with your wife and kid. Turn it off here, figure it out here, turn it off, go enjoy the softball game and your favorite sitcom and kiss your wife and go to bed. Like that, you can't let that fester, or else it affects your happiness. Early on, he used to tell me stories like it affected his health, because he came from a different scenario where he had to do this in order to they didn't have a trust fund, they didn't have family wealth. He was the first one to kind of blaze that trail, so it meant everything for him to do that, and he did it. He nailed it, and he did an incredible job between our whole life. I've known him 25, 30 years now, but he did an incredible job of teaching me those lessons of how to not make you unhappy, how to not let that consume you. Because you can focus on all the bad stuff all day. You can. It's very, very simple. Turn that off. It's going to fix itself, right? It's like a Nick Sabanism, right? Work the process. The process is in place for a reason. Work the process, and then you'll get the result, right? There's no shortcuts for hard work, but work the process and it'll come out. But he was a therapist at the end. He just let me work it out. And then he would give little tidbits here and there. But
we often joke about that same thing, full-time accountant, part-time therapist.
That's
when you have an advisory relationship, right? I mean, it's something that you think you do a pretty good job of, and but it's you got to be on all the time for your clients and the people that are relying on you. But to listen and let them help figure it out themselves it's a talent. It's hard. You want to fix everyone's problems, but you got to let them figure it out.
And I think that's the lesson here is if you're a leader in anything, if you're the CEO of your business, if you're the father in your household, if you're a community leader, the most important thing you can do is listen. And that was something that I'd watch Harold time and time again. We'd leave every single meeting with a client or an employee or something like that, and the first things out of his mouth every single time was, "I talk too much. I should have listened more." And I continue to be fascinated in the power of having a good mentor and having someone that, finds some connection and cares enough to say, "I'm going to help you avoid the mistakes that I made." Right. And they're going to be the guardrails for you. They're going to be, that entity that allows for you to swerve on the road a little bit every now and again. But when you get too close, they're going to bump you back on the road. Right. So these are the things that I try to make sure that we talk about, because then it forces you to think about how you can be a better leader. Right. Is now you think about that and you say, well, Doug did this for me, and Doug listened to me when I needed it, and he was this therapist to me. And now, as you've got leaders in your business, and you have people that are ultimately taking over different functions, and you have new, young leaders in the tower climbing business, you know your role now, right? You know your role is to put them on the couch, get your clipboard, and let them work through it. The leadership and management style of being a dictator and telling people how to do a job versus listening to people and help them draw their own conclusions, even if they come to the same end result. Them drawing their own conclusion is going to be a way better solution to the problem than anything else, because you're encouraging people to be critical thinkers, right?
Two Dougisms that I have to insert here. Number one, the connection between father, entrepreneur, leader. This was as a young father, he told me this. He said, "Chris, people ask you all the time, which one's your favorite kid?" And he said, and all these things mean more as you get older, right? As you sort of realize how deep these very simple one-liners were. He said, "Whichever one needed to be." And at first you're like, well, that's silly, whatever.
Lame answer,
and
right?
Then,
there's a reason.
Now, 20 years later, I'm like, that might be the most profound thing I've ever heard. I apply in business. I have managers, and when they come down and they're my favorite employee for that 10-minute meeting in my office.
Yep.
And they need to feel that. They have to. And that client has to feel like, now I'm spread pretty thin and all, but there's an art to make, and Doug, we're at this service, making people around you feel like they're important. And they are important. I'm not saying that they're not, but making them feel. I have a lot of people in my life who do not make me feel important. The ones that do are special, and it changes the way that I would interact with them. And I'll tell you the other one. And this is, he was one of the few people outside of my wife, maybe every week, couple weeks, he would see me and he'd say, "Chris, I'm really proud of you. You're doing a great job." And I'm 37, 39 years, and I'm like, well, it meant the world to me.
Yep.
Because I know that he knows. He knows what I'm going through, and he knows what's happening. And it would like reset me, right? It's like coming off a vacation. Doug said I'm doing good. I'm doing good. That's it. We're fine, guys. Let's go. And it would change my day.
Yeah.
It would physically change my mood for maybe the week. Yep. And he knew when. He didn't say it every day. Like it didn't become a punchline. He knew exactly when I needed to hear that. So it was the great ones know that type of thing. And the way you speak about Harold, same deal. They know.
Yep.
And our job now is to carry that on. Right now, we have to become that.
Yep.
So that's the next journey.
Yeah, I always applauded that from Harold, is that he knew when. Because to your point, if he said it all the time, it wouldn't mean as much, right?
It was a Miyagi level art. Right. That it was like not just when I needed to hear it, because I was like questioning the doubt, right? That this could go under. Yep. This tax situation could get Chris, I'm proud of you. You're fine. It's like, well, shoot, next quarter's going to be great. We're going to be fine.
Yep.
It did. So, yeah, I'm sorry. But, yeah.
We always have that imposter syndrome. We talk about it all the time. Like, how did we get here? What happened in our lives that we've, not that I'm the most important person in the world, but you feel this responsibility for everyone, and you start questioning yourself, and you have that little bit of reassurance is what we all need, even the greatest of the great, right? You need to see those things all the time.
Well, somebody told me this early on when we first had kids was, I was stressing out about something. I don't remember what it was when the kids were little. And they said, that's what's going to make you a good parent. It's because you're worried about it, right? That's what's going to make you a good business owner, is that you're worried about it, is that you feel you're not good enough, and you feel that, you're an imposter and you shouldn't be in this situation. But what separates you from the others is that you're cognizant of it, and you're always thinking about how you can be doing things differently, both as a dad, as a community leader, as a CEO or the boss of your business or whatever it might be. And that is what separates the good from the great.
That's right.
Is caring enough to constantly be judging yourself and, holding yourself accountable to being better than the person that you were yesterday.
And he was a big advocate. Who you surround yourself with. You and your team were a big part of that. Is when I came back in high school, I didn't hang out the best of all people, but I had kind of a mixed bag. But who you surround yourself with is kind of who you are. Yep. And I was smart enough to sort of realize that before I actually knew what it meant. And I did. I started trying to rub elbows with the Tim Petreys of the world and those guys. And that makes a big difference. The rising tide raises all ships, and I believe that. So I try to be better because I'm lucky enough to be in his orbit and some folks like that. And that was a big one of his was, you're my team. I'm the dumbest guy, and that's the best thing. That's why we're successful. I'm the dumbest guy in my business. Surrounded myself with people smarter and more capable, and then I joke. I say I give them pizza and I stay the hell out of their way. That's my job. Right. Give them pizza, give them a little bit of direction, and stay out of their way.
Yeah,
They're peacocks. You got to let them fly.
I don't remember if it might have been a Steve Jobs or a Tim Cookism. It's like, why do you hire great people and then tell them how to do their jobs?
That's it.
I struggle with that when I watch people, and we consult with businesses of all sizes, and I hear people say, "Oh, well, I think this person should do their job differently." And I'm like, you're paying them a bunch of money. They're a leader in your business. Why would you tell them how to do their job? Let them experiment. Let them come up with a solution on their own. Let them figure it out. Because alternatively, then they're not going to feel any equity in what you're doing. You've got to allow for people to have equity. And that to me really is the difference between good and great businesses, is that the great businesses are the ones that have people that have equity in what they are doing every day. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. The same theory applies. We have another guest coming on the pod in another couple of weeks that talks about the industrial athlete, and talks about the idea of in industrial meaning of any industry, right? Is that you just tell the people the rules to the game, and then you coach them, and you're there to give them the right resources that they need, and get out of their way and let them play the game.
You'll be shocked at what they can do, right?
They're
going to find the best way.
Right.
Most efficient way. Nobody wants to do something monotonous that doesn't bring them value. If you give them an opportunity, they're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity when I became an entrepreneur to really become the leader that I always wanted when I was an hourly guy, when I was right? And I took some lessons from Tim and you guys over there. I've seen him do it with you guys going back years, and I've definitely stolen some lessons from him. But not only you give them the resources and you stay out of the way, not only will they feel that equity and they're happier, you see that buy-in, right? That equity word is probably not strong enough. That I've seen folks when they, sometimes for the first time in their careers, and I say, no, that's I'm not telling you how to do that. You got to figure that out. When people are empowered to solve things themselves and be in charge of their own career, it's wild. Their personal happiness goes up, their relationships with their children go up, their production and their ownership in your business. They help me police everything about that business. And so it's just a win-win-win on every single side of the thing. And it's the only way to do business. And I took a page right out of his book there. So you can't overstate that enough.
Yeah.
Do you see a benefit to that? Both of you, I guess, because I know the way that I've been empowered to challenge you to challenge leaders that may not have happened in the rest of my life. You have to get some benefit out of that too, right? Just to know that you're always going to get the real answer, the real challenge when you need it. They're not always right 100% of the time. What does it look like from your perspective? Is that helpful? I mean,
I want to hear his answer, because he's much better at this than me and done it at a much bigger scale. And I think we have probably a similar answer. So,
I mean, for me, I got to a point in our business, like this wasn't something that I just did immediately. Like this was a learned trait over the course of time. I became a prisoner in my own business. I became a prisoner in my own life. I was doing 4,000 or 5,000 tax returns a year. I was working 80 hours a week, year round. There was a couple of stretches where I worked 365 days in a calendar year. And that's not like working an hour in every day. That was, a full 12-hour day. And I realized something had to change. And I looked around and I saw other people that were making the same mistakes. And I saw people that were, 50, 60, 70 years old in our industry doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They were insane people, right? and I'm like, how can I get this to change? How is it that I could go on vacation and check out? Like that still becomes my North Star, is being more present with my family and being able to take the time away that I truly need to take to reset. And the only way that ever happened was when you allow people to solve problems on their own. Because if you're constantly providing fish to people, they're never going to learn how to fish. That's right. And they're always going to depend on you for fish. So you have to teach them how to fish, right? And as a father, I remember the first time that I took my kids fishing. It was terrible.
Who came up with this idea?
Right?
Like, just give them fish.
I got to teach this kid how to fish. No, I'm just going to give him a filet of fish sandwich.
Fish, man. Yeah, we're going. Yeah.
And there's hooks everywhere, and there's lines everywhere, and there's crying, and there's yelling, and one of the kids is in the lake, and whatever. And again, there's this symbolism between being a father and being a business owner that says the same thing. Is like, you're going to ask your team members to solve problems. And it's going to be like the first time you take your kids fishing. It's going to be a nightmare. And what most people do is they then don't take the kids fishing ever again.
That's right.
Right? And they don't allow them that space to figure things out on their own. And then guess what? They don't develop. And they don't learn how to handle problems on their own. And so from my perspective, it was really, I was looking at it very selfishly. Like a lot of the things that we did in our business were done selfishly, not selflessly. It turned into being a selfless thing in the end, but it was a selfish motivation, is that I need to get out of here. I need to not be a slave to my business. And that was the only way that ultimately was ever going to happen. And the first handful of iterations of that were an unmitigated disaster in every way, shape, or form. But now that we've gone through it and then we've stayed tried and true to it, and we didn't allow that to change our mentality about how we intended to run this business in the future, it's the fruits of the labor are starting to show up. And the other thing that I saw was, I remember having a conversation with one of the young people on our team, and they were somebody that was really a rising star in our organization. And I could see them eventually taking over from me and taking my job one day. And I looked at him and I asked the question.
I don't have that tax. I can't do 4,000 tax
returns. I said young people. And they looked at me and they said, "I don't want your job." And that was the moment that changed for me. Was when I went to that person, and I'm thinking, I'm the CEO, I'm the managing partner, I'm the big dog on campus. Everybody wants my job. And I'm having this conversation with someone, and they're like, "Crazy? I see what you do. I see the quality of your life. I don't want that job." So that was what forced me to change. And that was what forced me to start to experiment.
Talk about parallels between being a dad and a business owner. Again, there's a lot there. But what I found, and I talked to him recently in the last year about this, when I backed away and I kind of stayed back out of that day-to-day for a while, there was a thing that happened. I underestimated my own presence in that. I don't have to micromanage everything, but I have to be present and do what I do well. I am whether we like it or not, we're the captain of the ship, and they have to see that. There's like a brand thing or a confidence thing that happens when we're around and we're involved. I mistook sort of being there and I thought I had to fall back into the shadows. And that's not what needed to happen. I just needed to give my managers time and space to do that. When I fell out of the public eye for a little bit, thinking I was doing the right thing, my overall organization lost some. It sort of went sideways, and some things weren't happening the way that I thought. So then I had to reevaluate. If you do it too early, it can be an unmitigated disaster. So timing and presence and what scale you do that out, when and where, that was a big deal. And I'm like halfway through that, trying to figure out when and where and how. Trying to be, again, Doug used to say, you got to be a cheerleader. I'm like, Doug, you're never going to be a cheerleader. You have to be a cheerleader. You have to show up and tell people you're doing great. I bring the box of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I make sure that I'm there with, I be there as often as I can with my guys when they're leaving. They have to have the confidence that the ship is being steered in the right direction. Yep. And if you're not there and you're not present and they don't see you and hear you and feel you, you don't have to be part of every single decision that happens, but you got to be there. Yep. And that growth is a funny thing. It doesn't all go the exact same way, and I'm working through that now. Is where I need to be kind of present and visible, and where I can kind of back off and let because ultimately I thought they're naturally just going to step up, and because I'm a pretty vocal guy, you guys can see, and not everybody's like that.
No.
Yeah, and you think that everybody, why wouldn't you want my job? It's so great. I'm so well, because not everybody. So either way, there's an art along with the science there, and figuring that out that's failing forward 101.
Yep.
I think.
Yep. And so you've got two very different, got to be counterintuitive things going on in your brain about how to lead, right? Is that you've got the structure and rigid environment of the military, which is a very top-down, dictatorship-esque style of leadership, is that you do this, period, and there's no questioning this. I am your superior. I tell you to drop down and give me 20, you're going to drop down and give me 20, right? And then you come into this entrepreneurial world, and it's very much so not that.
Not that at all.
Right?
Yep.
And if you came in and tried to run the business like a general, and you tried to come in and play war games with your business, how do you think that would land?
I think I'd be closed in a week. There are elements of it. Don't get me wrong. Doug and I used to spend a lot of time because my brother-in-law, who worked at the business for a long time, longer than I did, he was recently kind of took a different career path. He was a Marine Corps veteran. I was an Army veteran. So when we came back, we had that military mindset. And we would say, well, why don't you just, everything was very rank and file. Everything was very clear. And he would say, well, we don't have a contract. They'll just leave. They tell them to drop and give me 20. They're going to flip me off and walk out.
Yeah,
that's not the same. But the sentiment on my end was, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying I didn't not leave the military because of I believed in what I did. That's why I was doing it. I didn't punch my drill sergeant because I wanted to do that. Right. I wanted to be. So that's your mission now. Get them to want to be there.
Right.
Then, and we talked about earlier, when you empower people, you start empowering people, they're not going to want to leave. They're going to go through the hard things with you. Right. They're going to stay in the pocket. I've seen people, I've been walking out at 4:00 and I still have 2 or 3 managers. They're on salary. They could leave at 3:30. They're still there. I drive back by, for some reason, 6:00. They're still there. When people are doing it when they don't have to, that's when, there's elements of things going on right in that business. We're on the way. We're on the right path.
That's what real culture is, right? Is the real culture is the culture that happens when no one's paying attention.
You don't want the office space. Yeah, I'm going to need you to come in on
right. How about those TPS reports?
Yeah, I mean, that's not it. I mean, you're going to hold a pretty large grudge in that,
Right.
Especially during football season. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have some mutual friends that work for me and for you. I employ a husband, he employs the wife. And we found it, though, because you get both sides of it, though. But when you empower them to do that, they want to be there. You said it, that's the key to culture. One of the great things, though, is they're happier. Like I don't think it's phony. I think it's legitimately they're happier. When they're out and about and no one's looking, they're supporting and endorsing our business. They're proud to be a part of this organization. And again, from the sort of philanthropy side, there's no better thing in the world than just making people's lives better. And it fits both, it's two birds, one stone.
I mean, it is the core of human nature to want to be a part of something, to want to belong to something. I mean, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's anything that forms communities across the globe, it's our inherent need and or desire to be a part of something. So if more people looked at their business from that perspective and said, I'm not just doing this, I'm not just making widgets, I'm not just maintaining towers or doing tax returns, but we're going to create a community of people that do something together. And regardless of what that mission is, if we're doing it together and you're allowing people to feel like they're a part of it and their voice is heard, and you can show the power of doing things as a larger group, then people naturally are attracted to that and they want to be a part of it.
You nailed it.
Okay, so
can I ask one random question?
Let's go.
Right?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this. So how many towers have you climbed?
No, I'm not.
How high?
2.
Okay.
I was never.
You had some of
I
that
came in. I
experience.
came in early. I did it to sort of say that I did it.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of heights.
Well, I was going to say
not a
because
big fan of
if
heights.
you
I'll
came
do
in,
it.
You were 30.
I was.
How old were you? 30 something.
30. I was rated 30.
Okay.
Rated 30.
So you stopped being fearless at what age? Probably 25 for me.
12.
Yeah.
whatever.
Mid 20s. First time I started getting injured when I was playing basketball at the YMCA. That's when the fear started.
Yep. I always,
but no, not. I'm not. I didn't live that life. I'm not. Those guys are a unique, amazing breed of folks. Not me. I did our training tower. I went through the training, climbed a couple just to sort of say that I had done it, and then I took every excuse not to do that anymore. It is a unique breed. It is a unique breed of folks. I say it all the time when we're recruiting. There's a very small segment of people on Earth that can do that job. Period. Then of those folks, you need the ones that want to. And then of those folks, you need the ones that have a driving record and can pass a drug test and do all that stuff. So
that's a slim.
You are a subset of a subset of a subset. So the guys that we have are incredible human beings. And you can imagine the things that they do. Not only are they courageous and tough and they're smart. We climb towers. So everybody focuses on the climbing. I've had kids come in, they're like, so why are you paying me to climb? And I'm like, I'm not. Like, that's just how you get to work. You're actually, a couple of times. And you really thought,
You're just climbing?
Yeah. Money, please. I said, that's just
get
how
up
you
and
get.
ring the bell at the top.
Right. And what people lose, and I was early on in my career, I used to they call them tower climbers. I used to fight that. And I'd say, stop, they're tower technicians. They climb them, but what you're losing is that these guys are pretty sophisticated technicians on pretty sensitive high-tech equipment, telecom equipment of all, and what we focus on is a lot of public utilities and like EMS systems. So that is, we had a client at the state of Ohio that used to say this, you guys, God forbid, somebody in the ditch, rainy night, middle of winter, whatever. The only thing between like that state trooper like calling in for the ambulance and them, living, dying, whatever, is that radio working. That's what Tri-County Tower does. We make sure that stays on.
Yeah.
And that when I tell guys that when we recruit them, that is, and it's 100% true. It's not like hyperbole. Yeah. It's real. We maintain that system. We have the exclusive purchase order for the state of Ohio. So they are very sophisticated technicians, and what they do matters big time.
It goes back to purpose too, right? I mean, there's a purpose for what you're doing.
And that's something that I've always found fascinating in business is finding that purpose and being able to explain that to people like you just did. Is you could explain it as a tower climber, you could explain it as a tower technician, but explaining it in a way where people understand that what they are doing is making a difference on a day-to-day basis allows for people to want to come to work, allows for people to want to be a part of something. I remember a story that I heard from a fellow consultant in the business, was working with a company that made boats. And the company was struggling. They were having a hard time. They were having a hard time with people buying in and feeling equity in the business and all the things that we're talking about today. And they went out there and they interviewed everybody. And they interviewed all the employees and trying to get to the core of understanding of, why people were frustrated with what they were doing on a regular basis or were unhappy. And they get to one guy, and they said there's one guy in the shop, and he's always happy when he comes to work. He's like, why is this? Everybody else is miserable here, and this one guy is happy. And they asked him, they said, well, why are you happy? Why are you so happy about coming to work every day? And he said, well, I know that when this boat is done, people are going to make memories in this. And that changed the trajectory of that company forever, because that then became the story. Was, we're not building boats. We're not manufacturing a piece of equipment for people. We're not doing this for the metrics or the money or this, that, or the other, although we got to feed our families and pay our bills. But at the end of the day, we're not just making boats. We're helping people make memories, right? And that is different. Like, we all need to get out of bed in the morning and feel some need to go do what we're doing, because not every day is sunshine and rainbows, and some days suck, and sometimes things don't work the way that they're expected to. But at the end of the day, if everybody has this kind of aligning belief in what we're doing is going to make the world better, or is going to make someone happy at the end of the day, it's much easier. So, I mean, You've come to a conclusion at Tri-County Tower that is different than most businesses have been able to find. And that's a maturity of a business that a lot of people just don't get. And it takes time to figure it out. So there's a tremendous amount to be said about that.
Mm-hmm. Anytime you guys want to come climb a tower, you just let me know.
I think that passed about 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's a young man's game for sure.
Yeah.
Young Liam, though, I think he's ready.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'll get 2 or 3 rungs up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty tall, so I can kind of see a different perspective
It's
than
gonna be
most.
arbitrarily higher than I can get.
Okay. So, last question as we kind of wrap this thing up here, along this sentiment of failing forward. One of the things we try to get out of people as we go through the pod is understanding, magnitudes of failures and the things that you've learned from them. So what would you say over the course of your career to date has been the largest failure that you've experienced in business, as a father, as a coach maybe, and that ultimately became the most impactful from the lessons that you learned from it?
I think in my specific case, it's hard to pinpoint any big ones. We've been blessed and fortunate across the board. It's more of and you guys will probably relate, it's a steady series of micro failures, right? Week to week. Not putting my people in the right position to succeed. Maybe I could have stepped in. Maybe I should have stepped away. Maybe I should have been there earlier. Maybe I should have left later. I think it's I mentioned it earlier. I think it's the awareness of the impact that I have in people's lives, good and bad, presence or absence. It's micro failures. We haven't been bankrupt yet. We haven't, done any of these things. I haven't been arrested. In the business side, it's just getting better every day. It's learning from those lessons. We've talked about it. I had the extreme benefit, and I thank all of them, of having some terrible leaders over the years. And I thank them a lot, because I've learned more what not to do. Yeah. And so the big thing is just, and I hear you talk about it all the time here in our, just in our daily conversations, getting better. I just got to get better. Got to listen more. I have to, when I listen, taking that information and then applying it correctly, making sure that I'm, doing all those things. In my personal life, it's just being better. Again, I have a son who's 15. He's a football player. I'm a football coach. I think I know everything. I think I was a boy. He's a boy. I know it all. Giving him space. Right, I have to get better at that. I have to get better at, letting him come out of his cocoon and not helicopter parenting. And no parent ever thinks they do that, but I'm starting to see. My wife will give me some side eye and just let him go. And because like all of us, we know best. Yep. I know who he needs to be friends with and who he needs to date and where he needs to go, and I have to find that balance between making sure that I'm there and I support him and that I love him and that, I don't let him go way off the reservation, but he's got to be his own man. Yeah. So that's it. It's micro things. It's making sure that I get better every day, every week, every month.
So I think it's fair to say that the title of today's episode is Be the Guardrails.
Be the Guardrails.
Right?
Love it.
Be the Guardrails. So, Chris, where can people find you? Are you active on any social media? Do you have newsletters? Do you have a website that you could share out with the group for anybody that's heard your story, that wants to learn more, that wants to pay attention to the things that you're doing?
Gotcha. Yeah, we're located right here locally in North Jackson, Ohio, right on Mahoning Avenue, 8900 Mahoning. We're present on all the big social medias: Tri-County Tower, Facebook, LinkedIn, and maybe Insta. I don't know all of them. But you know all the ones. It's out there a little bit. But but the big one, if I could give a shout out, is just the awareness, the folks that are doing the Lord's work on the on the autism support side, Potential Development, Rich Center for Autism, Dylan's House, a few others, the Mahoning County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Those folks, they're amazing, and there's so much support going that way. So please just keep them in mind as you move forward. And that's it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for being here with us, man.
Yeah.
It was great.
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast wouldn't be possible without Stonefruit Studios and Bentley Studios. If you'd like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and leave a review and/or comment. If you found this episode particularly helpful, we also encourage you to share it with a friend or on social media. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and failing forward.